Okay, hello everyone. This is Moritz Bierling. We're now live with the Creative Economy interviews. This is the 9th episode, and today I have with me Josiah Zayner of the ODIN. Hi, Josiah.
Hey, what's up, dude? How's it going?
Very good. We're going to get into some of the stuff that Josiah does in a minute, but before we start, I will introduce him just roughly to get a kind of a good idea of what his background is. And before I even do that, actually, I want to say that I actually moved on Friday and over the weekend from Chile to Brazil. So I'm actually now in a new location where our new Exosphere HQ is. You can see behind me Luke, one of my co-workers, and then also Zeke in the corner there. And yeah, it's been quite an interesting time that we've had. And I'm looking forward to the program in January when we have all of you guys here. But yeah, Josiah has a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biophysics, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, all right.
Sounds complicated, but it's not really.
Right. And I saw when I perused his LinkedIn page that you have won quite lots of awards and done a lot of projects. And not really that the awards matter so much as that you get to do some cool stuff and show it to people that cool stuff can do something. But and you've also done some publications, so we're also going to go into that. And then also you've had a variety of professional experiences, and most notably at the NASA Ames Research Center. And that was very interesting to me because I saw that you worked on mass stuff with biology. And we're going to also go into that in a minute. And then also, lastly, in 2014, he founded the ODIN, which is his current company. And there, ODIN means Open Discovery Institute. And his mission there is to make biohacking and DIY science available to everybody. Now, my first question to you is, did you consciously choose ODIN as the name in reference to the god, or was it just something that came together?
Yeah. No, the ODIN name was made before the Open Discovery Institute. We don't really call it the Open Discovery Institute because that was the name that was kind of chosen after we chose the ODIN. So then we had the acronym. We kind of wanted to make it sound like, I don't know, like a superhero layer or something, right? Like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm going to work at the ODIN.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I guess you achieved that.
And right, ODIN is like I mean, let's be honest, ODIN is really cool. He like carved his his spear out of the tree of life, tree of knowledge. Yeah. Like, his fucking weapon was carved out of the tree of knowledge. How much more badass can you get? I don't know.
Right. That's actually a perfect mythologization of science, right? Like, okay, here's science, and it's actually a weapon. Yeah. Okay, great. So what are you up to these days?
Oh, a shit ton of stuff. That's kind of a bad question to ask.
Okay. Well,
so right now, a lot of the work I'm doing is with the ODIN. So that's just keeping the business running and coming up with new ideas for products and new ideas how to get people doing genetic engineering in their home, because that's kind of like the premise of our company.
Right.
One of the big things, actually, that we're probably going to release next week, we've been working on developing a kit so people could genetically engineer something and then use that thing they genetically engineer. Right now, all the kits we sell and all the kits other people sell are just kind of like science experiments. Like, let's genetically engineer this bacteria and maybe it'll like glow or something, which it's cool. But what you want is you want to be able to genetically engineer something and then do something with it.
Right.
So we spent like the past 6 months to a year working on these kits where you can genetically engineer yeast, like any yeast, like brewing yeast, baking yeast, anything, and engineer it to do like whatever you want. We'll have a few example kits where you can like change these color, make them fluoresce, make them smell different, make them do other things. Our big goal has been how people to use genetic engineering to actually make something tangible.
Right. Right. Yeah, a lot of the time these really come down to like science toy projects that don't go beyond the high school level, and then people don't actually do anything with it. So I like that. But what is your process to kind of come up with these ideas? I mean, I guess you also do biology work in your spare time, where you experiment with things, you try to figure things out, and you work on projects. So I guess in those projects you come up with new ideas for the ODIN as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I'm really fortunate that my company business that I own and run is also the thing I like to do and explore. So then, like, if I have an idea of something I want to explore that's science related or genetic engineering related, I can just, have the company fund my research and
Right.
development.
Awesome.
I think, I mean, for me, I think the number one, there's two things to having an idea of something I want to work on or explore. The first is having knowledge. So if I'm having trouble coming up with creative ideas, I would actually like read science, look up some new science, try to understand a topic I've never understood before. That fresh information kind of helps me, perspective. The other thing is just taking fucking time to think. Like if you never sit down and think. So I like to go for walks. So I go for long walks. And on these long walks, sometimes I'll go with somebody, sometimes I'll go by myself, and I'll just talk to the person or talk to myself in my head and just think about different topics, different ideas, let my mind roam and explore. I think if you don't take time to think, you're never going to come up with a creative idea because to me, it's more of just like, if you spend 5 minutes a day thinking, which is not bad, but you're going to be able to think of one or two ideas. If you spend 2 hours a day, you're going to be able to think of 100 ideas. One of them is bound to be okay or good, right?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I saw an article the other day on how social media is just the worst, especially for people who work in these kind of deep thinking jobs or roles, like researchers, people who work in science, people who write articles and this kind of stuff. And the article actually, or the author recommended people to just quit that entirely, although I think that's also often a step in the other direction too far. Like, okay,
Yeah.
just cut out entirely. Of course, that's a solution, but I guess a little bit of discipline will also do the trick. But
Yeah, some people call it like mindfulness. Some people like set alarms or put something on their calendar. Like I said, I think like having something associated with it, just like going for a walk. Like I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk,
right,
relax, and that also gives you time to think. Setting something on my schedule. I used to have something on my Google Calendar every day that said, take 5 minutes to think today,
right,
right? Take 5 minutes. And I would, when Google Calendar comes up, it sends you an email, so you have to do it and then click it off. Otherwise, they start to accumulate.
right. So basically, you use like cues in your environment to hit your routine up on a special thing.
Yeah,
I mean, I do this. Go ahead.
No, what were you saying?
I do the same thing, and especially in the morning. Like I have a strict routine where I go to the office and then I first spend the first probably 1 to 3 or 4 hours sometimes just writing, both my journal and as well like just work-related things and working ideas out at hours at a time without interruption. And I really cherish this time because it allows me to really focus in on something, then come back to something like a couple of minutes later when I have another idea, and then actually get somewhere instead of just constantly doing something, then switching context, doing the next thing, and so on.
Yeah, no, totally.
Right. Okay, so what was that NASA project about?
So what did I work on at NASA?
Yes.
NASA was a really interesting experience. It was really cool, actually. So what happened was, after I finished up my PhD, I didn't really want to stay in academic science just because a lot of the stuff people explore isn't interesting because it's all based on grants, it's based on publications and everything like that. And the stuff I wanted to explore is like a little more out there. It's more applied than it is like understanding fundamental aspects of stuff. So I was like, what should I do? So NASA had applications to write a grant to do, whatever you wanted, and then they would fund you for a couple years, and you get to work on this project. And the project I proposed was this like ridiculous project about engineering microorganisms to help in long-term space travel and colonization of other planets or planetary bodies like the moon.
Right.
And that was basically like one of the big things at NASA is sustainability, right? People don't think a lot about that, but you have to imagine if you're living on a space station and you can only get a shipment once every month or once every few months, sustainability becomes a big thing, right?
Yes.
What do you do with all your waste? Like, how do you make sure you have enough food and water? A lot of people don't know this, but the astronauts actually get about 90% of their water from recycled urine and recycled condensation inside the space station.
Yeah.
So the idea was to engineer microorganisms to break down other wastes that you don't normally think about. Plastics is a big one.
Right.
So a lot of people don't know, but the astronauts use a shit ton of plastic. I think it's like 100 to 200 kilos per year, just because like it's so good, right? It's so good to store food and things in. So I was working on engineering bacteria that could chemically modify the plastic so then it could be composted. So that like if the astronauts went to Mars and they had all this plastic, right? 4 people, about a year to travel there, it'd be like 800 kilograms of plastic. They could then compost that plastic to grow plants, grow other things, and not just let it go to waste.
Right. Yeah, and I guess this becomes really important, especially when you go beyond like the 3 to 4 people scale. When we're looking at the Mars colonization idea, or even just exploration, when you start to have there 5 to 10 to 100 people, then it really becomes very important to have these kind of mechanisms in place. I think I saw this announcement by Elon Musk a couple of weeks ago, where he proposed his plan for colonizing Mars, and you really start to see how much is really required to sustain humans, even on Earth. He basically said, okay, you have to replicate the entire industrial base, and that is assuming at a level of productivity that is 100 times higher than on Earth. You would need a couple million people.
Yeah, it's crazy because we don't think about it. Like, we don't think, how many gallons of water do I consume per year?
Right.
Like, we don't actually think about that ever. We just consume it and we go on with our lives. But then when you're sending somebody to another planet and you think about, all right, how many gallons of water is this person going to consume, right? Just that they need. And then also you think about like bathing, you have to bathe a little bit, at least sometimes probably. And also maybe for like toilets and stuff like that, right? You probably might need a little bit of water. And you're talking like liters, 10,000 or even more, like per person per year.
Right.
And then you're talking about, wow, that weighs a ton and takes up a ton of space.
Yes.
You talk about like 4 people, just 4 people, right? You're talking like 40,000 liters of water or something.
Jesus. Yeah.
You're like, what? Like, how do we do that? And then food, right? And you're talking about the same thing. It's like, I don't know, 500 or 5,000 kilograms of food a person eats in a year or something. Like, what? Like, how do you get that all to Mars?
Yes, it's really crazy. And I guess it really makes you appreciate how much we are in this kind of system of interlocking circles and this ecosystem of things that all have to happen in order for us to sustain ourselves, that we don't actually see and that are completely outside of our mind. And we can kind of luckily spend our time and energy just focusing on the little part of this human society that we contribute to. It's really strange.
No, it's amazing, right? The industrialization and commercialization of so much stuff that like I don't have to plant my own food, right? I can if I want to. I have that luxury, but like I don't have to.
Right.
There's people who do that for a living. I don't have to build my own house.
Right.
There are people that do that. I don't have to build my own form of transportation. There's somebody who does. Like, Yeah, we're living in a pretty amazing time.
Yes, yes. I guess that's the beauty of the market. Although even there we have some problems, of course, as well. Um, but how did your interest in science actually start? Because you have done a shitload of stuff that is very interesting, but usually it starts somewhere where either you read something or you experiment with things, and then some teacher tells you, "Hey, you want to do this a little bit more interesting," or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know. So like originally, I don't know if I was interested in science so much as computers. So I grew up during like the computer hackers of the 90s, late 90s. Um, I think it was probably all spurred on by the movie Hackers, actually. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's
No,
definitely a
probably not.
classic. You haven't
I
seen
was
it? Oh man, you
no,
gotta watch it.
I was born '93, man.
Yeah, I think it came out in like 90. You gotta see it. It came out in like
I will.
99. It's
Writing it down.
definitely a classic. It was like one of Angelina Jolie's first movies.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah, it's crazy, crazy. Um, anyway, it kind of inspired me to get into like computers and computer hacking and all these things. And I got a job working at Motorola out of high school just because all the knowledge that I had, I was self-taught. That was right around the time where computer and tech companies started hiring people, even though they didn't have any degrees. They would just like test you. You know, they would do like, all right, you know, program this or do this. And they were like, oh, I can do it. So they hired me. Obviously, in the early 2000s, the dot-com bubble. Once that burst, I was out of a job. It was hard to find a job. So I decided to go back to school. And I'm kind of a reductionist at heart. So I was like, what is like the most, reductionist I can get? And that was kind of like biophysics and biochemistry. Like how proteins and how all these things work on an atomic level. And that kind of excited me and still excites me to this day.
Right. Yeah. I heard the fellow of our last program at the academy where we did biohacking as well. He also talks about this like with a precious love for biology, but basically he said the cell is the oldest technology on the planet, billions of years old, and this has been proven through so many time or through so much time that like that's a killer app in a sense.
Yeah, no, that's a cool way to look at it for sure. Yeah. No, I mean, and it is amazing how little we understand and how much we should understand. I kind of look at it like an alien technology, right?
Yes.
It's like a cell, and it could be an alien technology. I'm not going to count that out. Right? Some people believe in the idea of panspermia, where like maybe cells came over from, some distant, far-off galaxy.
Right.
But it's kind of like this alien technology that's on Earth, right? We didn't invent it.
Nope.
We don't really know exactly how it works. Like, we try to recreate it. So people have been trying to recreate artificial cells and all these things. We can't. We can't recreate it from scratch. So it's like this really weird technology that we possess, we can use, but we don't completely understand it. It's crazy.
Right, and it's better at everything that we do by many magnitudes of order, and we usually take our cues also from it. I mean, when you look at how planes were designed, they definitely took their cues from birds. They do the same thing in material science a lot. I think, for example, bird bones are very interesting material, and also construction, where you have this kind of hollow core that has various like arcs in between to make it way less, but still be very strong. I mean, definitely this. What was it called? I think biomimicry is the term, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate technology because it's self-replicating, reproducing, and it's physical matter. So like the greatest technology of our time has probably been like computers, electronics, internet, things like that. But that's all confined to this digital world,
right?
That we can't really access. We can't really bring it into our world. 3D printing and stuff like that, kind of. But even then, like, you can't really 3D print a laptop, right?
Right.
Scratch. You have to print all the microprocessors, the battery. There's so many different components, the LCD, so many different components that go into it. We're not at that place yet right now.
Right.
But with this new technology, with cells and genetic engineering and synthetic biology, right? You can start from a single cell and get a tree, right? You can start from a single cell and you can get a human, a bird, all these things. So it's like, how do we harness that and how do we use that? That's probably going to be the huge question of like the next 50 or 100 years.
Right. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that biology is basically the new computer science that all the smart people are now interested in getting into, kind of the new frontier for what previously was the hacker ethos. But what are your plans, or what is your idea of where this technology will go soon? Like what do you think we can apply it to and that interests you?
Well, the big thing that interests me, number one, is getting it into the hands of lots of people, right? Because I think with all new technologies, with computers, with electronics, with things like the Arduino, once you get it into the hands of people, you have no idea what's going to happen, right? Because people they're brilliant and they're crazy, and they do stuff I can't even imagine, right? Somebody's going to try to do something completely awesome and crazy that like I would never even imagine.
Yes.
So that's a big one. The other one, which I think is going to become huge in the next few years, is actually like genetically engineering human beings. So probably both adults and embryos before they're born. I think this technology is just going to explode because right now I think people are afraid of it for a lot of the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of looking at all the good it can cause, all the good it can do and cause.
Right.
And once people start realizing that, it's going to change a lot when people are accepting of genetic engineering like that.
Right. Yeah. And I guess this technology is now out there, and it's really, there's no way to put the genie back into the bottle and kind of say, okay, we forget about this. This doesn't exist. We are not going to experiment with it, because somebody will. And just thinking that making it difficult to access it will actually prevent it is a pipe dream. So instead of that, we should make it accessible to as many people as possible, so that we have all these Einsteins out there working on it. And then when somebody releases, let's say, a toxic virus or something that could wipe out a lot of people, then we have lots of other people also figuring out how to do something that is against it, right? So
exactly.
But you touched already on the really important part that a lot of people who are interested in science forget a lot of the time. That is, they want to just experiment. They just want to tinker. They just want to do these things and kind of sit in the labs and do these things. But there's a critical component in making the science more accessible to many more people, and that is, of course, the business and the economic side. And if we don't help make it accessible to lots of people, then this will never get where everybody wants it to go. So I think your work and the work of other people who do the education, who do the kind of marketing, of course, as well, and who kind of help children get enthusiastic about this is very crucial in getting us further along this path.
Yeah, no, I don't think people understand, like with computers, one of the big things that drove computer innovation was the consumer market, right? When there was 10, 20, 100 computer companies, then they were all competing with each other, trying to innovate over each other. Once the consumers had it, the consumers were also trying to, innovate, do stuff, maybe start new companies, maybe just write open source software.
Right.
But it took everybody, right? It took the consumers, it took the companies, it took that there need to be some sort of commercial or economic value. And then you had everybody working on it for one reason or another, and it just exploded. And now we got fucking cell phones, that are faster than computers were 5 years ago.
Right. They're not even cell phones. I just think of them as like supercomputers in my pocket that also can call people, because that's really what they are. I mean, very few people actually use it for calls,
I know. Well, how often do you call somebody?
Yeah, exactly. But you're right. Like when the computer entered more homes, especially not just businesses but also homes, actually people had the tools for production for the first time in their home after it kind of was in the company's hands to supply the tools for people to work. You know, like before we had the kind of craftsmen who had their shops with their tools and these kind of things, and who worked on their things with their own tools. And in the digital era or the information era, we kind of had this kind of short time where they didn't have access to these tools and had to take them from the firms that supplied them, especially when they're expensive, like these big computers. And now that everybody has the supercomputer either in their phone or on their laptop, they can actually get access to all the information they need and all the tools they need to start producing.
No, and it's the same thing with like synthetic biology and genetic engineering.
Right.
It's such an advanced and cool tool. If you wanted to engineer something, right? You'd have to go to some company and probably pay them, depending on what organism and what you wanted to do, $10,000 to $20,000.
Right, right.
If I gave you the components in a tutorial on how to do it, you could probably do it for $200, $300 or something.
Right.
So I think exactly like you said, it's giving people the tools so they no longer have to rely on only these companies or only these organizations. Instead, they can start to explore things on their own.
Right. Yeah, I think also another critical component is having other people around you who want to do the same thing. Like, it's often very difficult to sustain your enthusiasm, even when you really care about something, is when you get a lot of barriers into the way and you want to do something cool, but then, okay, I don't have the money for it, or now I have to work on the job. But if you have people around you that you can kind of pool your resources together and work on ideas together, then it really becomes interesting. It can become even more than just a project and more of an actual, even a business, perhaps.
Oh, yeah, totally. For sure.
And that's how people also today start actually to make themselves interesting for future employers and partners. Like, I've been watching this very closely, that we have had this in the digital era and kind of the digital world and economy a lot now, that people don't actually care anymore about your degrees, but they care about what you've done, right? But with biology, it's difficult to get access to the tools in order to do that. And now with stuff like yours coming out, people can start, hey, look, I did this thing, and I took part in this contest, and I worked with my friends on this award thing, and then we put it on the website, and we wrote an article about it. And basically what you're doing there is you're proving that you can sustain something over a longer period of time, that you have a very big interest in something, and that you can put something into words that other people can also understand.
No, that would be like the ultimate, right? To have somebody get a job in biotech who has had zero traditional training. That's like, that would be the coolest thing for me. And I know it'll happen.
Yes.
It's going to happen.
Yes.
I don't know when. Maybe it'll happen next year, maybe 5 years. But like, that's going to be like, I'll be so happy and excited when that happens.
Yes. No, I think it'll come relatively soon, but of course on a very small scale at first. But I mean, we are also working on that here at Exosphere to give people tools and access to these tools, and then also the kind of setting where they really get jump-started into a direction with this and then can go running from there. We had a participant at the past program who participated in the biohacking stream, and partly because of his participation in this, he got a job at the #1 cancer clinic in the US, Mayo Clinic, who said, wow, your project experience with this is very interesting. We want to have you on our staff and do biolab work. So it's getting there. Of course, he also had a college degree, but people start paying attention to things that you've done on your own or with other people that don't really fit into the old educational model.
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool.
So to finish this off, what kind of advice would you give? And if you don't want to give advice, like what has helped you personally in the past to get started, get going, and really start in your career?
No, I think that's a question, and it has the stupidest and worst answer, but because it just seems so stupid. But honestly, I would say the #1 thing in order to be, get started in a career, be successful in a career, anything, is just fucking do something.
Right.
Like, every day I sit there and I think, oh, there's this research project I want to try out.
Right.
And instead of sitting there and saying, oh, I'm going to plan it out completely 100% perfect, or, you know, I'm going to do this thing 100% perfect, I just fucking do it.
Right.
Or there's a grant that you need to apply for. And you're like, oh, man, it's going to take so much time. Just fucking do it, right?
Right.
You know, maybe submit the shittiest app. Some of the grants I've received, I spent like 24 hours on the application.
Right.
And some I haven't received, I spent weeks or months. You can never tell.
Yes.
So, but if you just do stuff, if you're constantly doing stuff, if you're like, did a research project yesterday, and you do a research project today, and you do a research project tomorrow, and you do it the next day, right? Even if none of those work, eventually one's going to work.
Right.
Eventually one's going to be cool. Eventually one people are going to appreciate. And I think it's just that idea that like everything we make has to be perfect or awesome or beautiful. And it is. Like all the work a lot of people do, you do, I do, we create lots of beautiful things. But it's also okay if you don't. It's also okay if you're just, you know, making stuff. Eventually something is going to work out. And it sounds stupid, but you just have to do it over and over. Just try something, do it, try something, do it.
Right.
If you never try anything, if you never do anything, right, then of course it's never going to happen.
Right.
But when you are trying, when you are doing, right, then stuff just happens.
Yeah.
It just does.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure you know.
Yes, I do. I mean, ideas to me come now very easily, just because I have so much to do anyways, and I connect some dots here, and I have some people there, and then things start to happen. But it's of course more than the idea. Everybody can have an idea, but if you only have it in your head, that doesn't do anybody any good. So, I mean,
Yeah.
what do I want to say? Right. For example, this interview series that I've started, like I had seen other people do it. They have big logos, they have nice intros, they have the best guests in the world. What did I do? Okay, I got some people out of my networks that asked them, hey, do you want to have an interview? I got started, asked our designer to make a little thumbnail image, and that's it. I learned so much along the way already in the first 9 interviews that maybe put some description in the YouTube box, maybe put a link to the survey we're doing right now, and like it just starts to happen. You have to improve over time. But if you get paralyzed, which I used to do really much, like a lot, I'm very much like a cerebral being as much as you can think of it. But once I actually got around the right people and started doing things, it really just starts to happen on its own.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's the key. Don't get paralyzed, right? Don't get paralyzed like thinking about it too much. Just fucking do it. And if it fails, it fails. That's all right. You tried it, you learned something, you grew, right? I think that's what stops a lot of people from, you know, doing that cool thing that they've always wanted to do, right? They just get paralyzed with like, yeah. So that's my like one rule in life is, you know, when I have a project that I want to work on, I just do it. I just do it.
Right. Are you excited for Rick and Morty?
Oh yeah, I'm totally excited.
Okay, so thanks for everybody for watching. If you want to get in touch with Josiah, you can find his contact information in the description below, and also send him an email if you want to. If you want to do the same with us, feel free to do so. And I will also link in the description both the survey that we are currently doing on work and technology in the 21st century, which we would love for you to fill out and help us out. And then I will also link a recent podcast episode of the School Sax podcast where I and our founder, Skin Elaine, appeared, and where you can check out what our philosophy behind Exosphere is, why we do the academy, and all these kind of things. So thanks for watching. Thanks, Josiah, for joining, and I'll see you in the next one.